Yeshua said to his disciples that were gathered around him at Capernaum that those who do the will of the Father are his mother, brothers, and sisters. After this, Yeshua took his disciples apart from the crowds and taught them more about the importance of doing the will of the Father. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Doing the Father's will is of the greatest importance. Only those who do the will of the Father will enter the kingdom of heaven. These words come at the end of this particular teaching session of Yeshua's that we call the Sermon on the Mount. What did Yeshua teach on this occasion about the kingdom of heaven and doing the will of the Father? I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. Yeshua opened his teaching by describing the special place that those who have been beaten down in this life but still retain humility of spirit will have in the kingdom of heaven. We call these promises the Beatitudes, and we examined them in our previous teaching. Following this, Yeshua turns his teaching to explaining the will of the Father and the connection to the kingdom of heaven. Yeshua had already had many confrontations with the Pharisees and scribes who challenged his interpretation of the Torah, particularly that of Sabbath observance. They accused Yeshua and his disciples of doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath and were enraged when Yeshua healed on the Sabbath. Luke 6:11. But they were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. They were enraged because they thought that Yeshua was trying to do away with the Torah. Yeshua tells his disciples plainly that he did not come to do away with the Torah. Matthew 5:17 through 19. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. The words abolish and fulfill are opposites in this passage. To abolish something is to destroy it. To fulfill, then, means to establish it. The sages use these terms to talk about incorrectly or correctly interpreting the observance of Torah. The First Fruits of Zion, in their work, The Chronicles of Messiah, state, a rabbi who misinterpreted the Torah was said to be abolishing it. A rabbi who properly interpreted the Torah was said to be fulfilling it. Contrary to what the Pharisees believed, Yeshua's purpose was to correctly interpret how to observe the Torah. This proper observance is critical to the hierarchy within the kingdom of heaven. Those who break the Torah and teach others to do so will be least in the kingdom of heaven. Those who observe the Torah correctly and teach others to do so will be great in the kingdom of heaven. Yeshua goes on to bring up the observance of the scribes and Pharisees who questioned his own observance of the Torah. Matthew 5:20. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. The observance of the Torah as practiced by the scribes and Pharisees was not sufficient for them to enter the kingdom of heaven. In what ways have they fallen short or incorrectly interpreted the Torah and thus the will of the Father? Yeshua elaborates on this theme for the remainder of the Sermon on the Mount. He addresses specific commandments of the Torah and explains the deeper and true way to observe them. From these examples, we can infer the deeper and true way to observe all of the Torah. Yeshua starts with the negative commandments, addressing each of the last 5 of the 10 commandments. Exodus 20:13 through 17. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Yeshua begins with murder and ends with the positive aspect of the last commandment, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Let's look at Yeshua's explanation for the commandment, you shall not murder. Numbers 35 outlines the conditions for establishing murder as opposed to an accidental death. Anyone who strikes another with an instrument made of iron, wood, or stone, resulting in that person's death, is guilty of murder. When an instrument is not used, the intent matters. Numbers 35, 20, and 21. If he pushes him out of hatred or while lying in wait, hurls something at him so that he dies, or in enmity he strikes him with his hand so that he dies, the one who struck him shall surely be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. Yeshua explains that it is not enough to merely refrain from murder. It is just as important to refrain from thinking ill of your brother. Yeshua states that the act of hatred or enmity is the same as if the person actually committed the murder. Matthew 5, 21 and 22. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. The Apostle John will later write in his first letter to the churches that those who harbor hatred for their brother are murderers. 1 John 3:15. Whoever hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Yeshua warns that the one who has a disagreement with his brother, whether it is from his brother or himself, needs to resolve it before bringing his offering. Matthew 5:23 and 24. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. This is not a new teaching. It is straight from the Torah. The requirement for bringing a guilt offering is that in whatever way a man has sinned against his brother, restitution has to be made before bringing the guilt offering. Leviticus 6:4 and 5. Then it shall be, because he has sinned and is guilty, that he shall restore what he has stolen, or the thing which he has extorted, or what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or the lost thing which he found, or all that about which he has sworn falsely. He shall restore its full value, add 1/5 more to it, and give it to whomever it belongs on the day of his trespass offering. Nowhere is this command to be in harmony with others more important than in the marriage relationship. Peter exhorts believers to be in harmony with their wives so their prayers will not be hindered. 1 Peter 3:7. Husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Yeshua goes on to elaborate on divorce, adultery, and giving false oaths. He indirectly addresses stealing and coveting a neighbor's goods with a prohibition against retaliation and a commandment to love not just your neighbor, but your enemy as well. Matthew 5:43 to 45. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. Yeshua explains that God shows love to all men, not just those who love him, by providing the blessing of rain on all men. As sons of the Father, we also must pray for blessings on our enemies. Why would we do that? Yeshua explains that it brings glory to the Father. Matthew 5:14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Yeshua then turns to the positive commandments that God gives, specifically to love God with all the heart, soul, and strength. Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. God gives the command as a set of three, the heart, soul, and strength. The number 3 is the number of divine completion. From the Jewish perspective, Rabbi Joshua bar Nehemiah, a 2nd century rabbi, as quoted by Rabbi Rachmiel Friedland, in an article titled The Trinity is Jewish, wrote, "The Torah is Trinitarian, for it is composed of the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. The Mishnah, Talmudic learning, is a trinity composed of Talmud, learning, halachot, daily Jewish laws, and Haggadot, historical items. The mediator consisted of a trinity of Miriam, Moses, and Aaron. Prayers are a trinity of morning, afternoon, and evening prayers. Israel is a trinity consisting of priests, Levites, and Israelites. The name Moses in Hebrew consists of 3 letters. He is of the tribe of Levi, which again is in the Hebrew 3 letters, from the seed of the patriarchs, who are a trinity of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the 3rd month, which is Sivan, after Nisan and Iyar, on Mount Sin, whose letters are 3, as it is written, and they rested in the wilderness of Sin." Midrash Tanhuma on Exodus 19. So Yeshua gives his instructions on how to love God in 3 parts. First Fruits of Zion, in their work The Chronicles of Messiah, compare loving God with all the heart with prayer, with all the soul with fasting, and with all the strength with charity or good deeds. Yeshua explains how each of these is to be done. There is not a question of whether or not to pray, fast, and do good deeds, but how to do them. On good deeds, Yeshua says that they are to be performed without fanfare and big displays. They aren't to be with the blowing of a trumpet. Matthew 6:2. Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. Yeshua is using a play on words. The sound of a trumpet draws attention to the activity in the area of the trumpet blast. Also, according to 18th century scholar Alfred Edersheim, the donation boxes in the temple were called shofarot, trumpets, because they were shaped like trumpets. Ideally, charity or good deeds were to be done in secret. Matthew 6:3 and 4. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly. Yeshua will later say that our hearts are where we have chosen to store our treasure. Matthew 6:19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The act of charity is an act of love with all of our might and worldly goods towards God. And the only one who needs to know about the good deeds is God, who is the one who ultimately receives the gift. Next, Yeshua spoke about the proper attitude of prayer. Prayer like charity was not to be done as a big display. Matthew 6:5. And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. Like with good deeds, prayer was between God and the one bringing the prayer. It is our act of love to the Father. Matthew 6:6. But you, when you pray, go into your room, and when you have shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Yeshua demonstrated this private prayer time with the Father. He frequently went aside and prayed apart from the crowds. On the night that he was betrayed, Yeshua went apart from his disciples, taking his 3 closest disciples to watch with him. But he even withdrew from them to pray. His prayer is a prayer from the depths of his heart. Matthew 26:36-39. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." He went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Finally, Yeshua addresses fasting. Once again, fasting was a private event between God and the one fasting. Matthew 6:17-18. "But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly." The prophet Isaiah describes a fast as an affliction of the soul, while warning that the fasts the children of Israel have been observing have been for their own pleasure and not an act of love toward God. Isaiah 58:3. "Why have they fasted, they say, and you have not seen? Why have we afflicted our souls, and you take no notice? In fact, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exploit all your laborers." The theme of all of Yeshua's teaching during this Sermon on the Mount has been to observe the Torah with the heart and not just with outward actions. Yeshua summarizes his teaching with what we call the Golden Rule, Matthew 7:12. "Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." The Torah and the prophets include God's commandments and exhortations. Yeshua says that they are summed up in 2 commandments. Matthew 22:36-40. "Teacher, which is the greater commandment in the law?" Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." The Apostle Paul exhorts believers to utilize all the gifts given to us with love and sincerity. Romans 12:6-9. "Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching, he who exhorts in exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good." The observance of Torah from the heart is the will of the Father. Is this then sufficient for entering the kingdom of heaven? Is this sufficient for salvation? This deeper understanding of Torah is necessary to enter the kingdom of heaven. It is the correct way to interpret and do the Torah. Although many of the scribes and Pharisees observed the Torah only outwardly, others observed it from the heart. And Yeshua said their righteousness was not enough to gain them entry into the kingdom of heaven. Yeshua says that it is also necessary to believe that the Father sent the Son to bring salvation. Just like God sent Moses to bring the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land, so God sent Yeshua to bring all who would believe in him as the Son of God and means of salvation out of slavery to death and into eternal life, into the kingdom of heaven. John 6:38-40. For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. This is the will of the Father who sent me, that of all he has given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up at the last day. And this is the will of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. Yeshua says in Revelation that the saints are those who have both the Torah and faith in Yeshua. Revelation 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Don't be one of those who cry out to the Lord that you have prophesied in his name and driven out demons in his name, only to fall short of the kingdom of heaven. Believe in Yeshua that he is the Son of God, sent to bring salvation to Jew and Gentile alike. Then act to love God with all your heart, soul, and strength. This is doing the will of the Father. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this has been Shadows of the Messiah. Shalom, and be blessed.